Good afternoon. I call to order this special meeting of the San Bernardino International Airport Authority this Thursday, March 1st, 2018. Before we go into closed session, we'll do a roll call.
From the City of Colton, please state your name for the record.
Richard De La Rosa.
Thank you. From the City of Loma Linda.
Ovi Popescu.
Thank you. From the City of Highland.
Penny Lilburn.
Thank you. And from the City of San Bernardino.
Carrie Davis.
And Fred Charette.
Thank you very much.
I don't need that,
Anything to add to closed session?
Nothing to add, sir.
All right. We will recess to closed session and reconvene here upon the completion of closed session. We're back in session now. We'll ask council to report on closed session.
There was no reportable action taken in closed session. For the record, Mayor Davis recused himself on item D as in David.
Thank you. And also for the record, Jack Woods has taken a position for city council member alternate for Mayor Richard De La Rosa. And we'll now call this open session to order, and we'll ask Councilman Ovi Popescu to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman. Do we have any conflicts of interest to disclose at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll go to item number 2, informational items by the director.
So I've got a couple of quick slides here I want to go ahead and pull up. As you saw in our announcements, we started February with a pretty exciting new partner. We announced a co-marketing partnership with a company called JetX that we've been working with for a few years, but not working in this fashion. They are an international flight planning company, and they happen to be in over 30 countries. Had some follow-on meetings with them just this week, in fact. And what this partnership does is extends our international reach to bring in more business and charter flight activity in and out of our FBO. So it's a pretty important progression for us, and they bring a lot of resources in flight planning, ground support facilities, but they also operate a network of FBOs throughout the world. This is as I said, a co-branding agreement, so it actually provides incentives to the company to drive more traffic through our FBO. They get certain discounts that they can pass on to their customers, but we retain 100% control of our FBO and its operations, and quite a bit of marketing reach. So we had some follow-on meetings this week on implementation, some more scheduled next week, and we'll actually be rolling this out in earnest within the next month, and happy to see them. In fact, we're hoping to get some of the representatives over here at the end of the month. If we go to the next slide. So just this week, we were able to enter into another partnership. And this is a new venture for us, but it's an MOU, an international MOU with Abu Dhabi Airports Company. And this is in the United Arab Emirates. They operate and facilitate flights in multiple airports in the UAE. This one is specifically targeted to Al Bateen Airport that they manage, which is primarily a corporate executive jet facility. There's some interesting parallels. They were formerly a military base. We were formerly a military base. They've had to rebuild infrastructure. We've had to rebuild infrastructure. And it gives us a broad reach of expertise and a forum to be able to share best practices. The real intent and primary intent, though, will be working to drive traffic back and forth with their charter and diplomatic flights. And that's where they're really focused on some pretty innovative strategies and on how to do that. With this company, though, they're extremely deep as far as expertise, but also their access to influential folks within the UAE government. They have common ownership with many large flight planning jet management companies in the UAE, and that brings access to those resources to us as part of this MOU. So our next steps beyond the signing, so this signing took place at their air show. We went over to attend that, and were greeted on Tuesday with a member of the royal family. He came out to attend the signing, and that was unexpected, but very pleasing to see that they took it that seriously. So I signed it on behalf of our airport, and then their CEO, acting CEO, signed a part of Abu Dhabi Airports Company. So if you can imagine an entity in the UAE as large as Los Angeles World Airports, this is the equivalent of that, and they have selected us to be their partner here in the U.S. So some embassy staff were able to participate and support us in this, and of course Commissioner Popescu was able to get there and attend, which I really appreciate. So Ovi, if you've got comments, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
I just wanted to comment on the fact that this is what this took basically 4 years. We never thought we would get here, but some of you may or may not remember, but we've been dealing with the UAE for quite some time, and we've had some diplomatic flights from them. I've developed a relationship with their government through their consulate here. However, keep in mind that, just to backtrack a little bit, we entered an agreement with the Department of Commerce about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and the board approved that, and this is one of those effects from that relationship, because as a result, we then hosted that Import Trade Council, Import-Export convention or conference at our airport last year, if you recall. And there's some people that came to that from the Department of Commerce. Subsequently, one of them visited us. This is really big. I mean, it's hard to understand how big this is. This was made possible because of the gentleman who actually came to visit us. They are our largest trading partner in the Middle East. They do about $22 billion a year in sales. The UAE has invested over $10 billion in California alone. So this goes beyond just airport. It gives us access to tremendous resources, not just for the airport or aviation, but the people they deal with. Just a couple of quick notes about the pictures. In the middle, next to me, one of the people that they brought was one of Mike.
There you go. You're back.
A member of the royal family of Abu Dhabi.
Is that Mike?
I'm sorry?
Is that Mike? Member of the royal family?
No.
Not that I know of.
But he was brought over, and we spent a little bit of time with him, and he's also the co-director of Royal Jet, which is one of the companies we've been talking to now for quite some time. And they are very much involved in investing all over the world. We are fortunate to have the embassy staff there, and the reason that was important is they provided us with the flags at the last minute. There was a little bit of back and forth. We weren't sure the signing ceremony was going to go through. We ended up making a lot of phone calls. It did go through eventually. The gentleman on the far right is from the embassy. Just to give you perspective, he is one of the ones that deals with delegations that come to Abu Dhabi. So in the last 3 weeks, he has hosted the Vice President, Majority Leader Ryan, a delegation from Southern California of congressmen, and former President Bush and Clinton were there last week. So pretty much all world leaders eventually work their way to Abu Dhabi. They have an extremely large sovereign wealth fund, and they are constantly working on building relationships. And to piggyback with that, we met a day prior with about 6 other companies in Dubai and one of the other Emirates, Sharjah. One of them manages about 250 jets. Another one manages 40. The other company was JetX. But the reason I bring that up is because they're all interconnected and trying to bring business. The UAE has become a hub for aviation, especially for logistics. And subsequently, one of our consultants stayed behind. That's the lady on the far left, and she's having some meetings with one of the airports, large airports out there that's brand new, Dubai South, and they're very interested in looking at us for cargo. Mike also met with another company that deals with leasing airplanes. So there's a lot of synergy at work here in trying to bring more activity to the airport, and I think this agreement is actually going to really put us on the map. It's many airports and countries would die to have an agreement with them. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better group of people. They're pretty far advanced in some of the areas. They're actually farther along than we are when it comes to airport management. They're building a brand new $1.5 billion airport in Abu Dhabi. Their goal is to finish it by 2030. And you can't see him, but the gentleman who helps set this up is the manager of all 5 airports. And then the gentleman whose Mike is shaking his head, he's actually the executive director, a CEO of all 5 airports, but the actual manager that helped drive this is next to him. You can't see him in that blurry picture. So anyway, I'm still shocked that we're here functioning. I did the math. This meeting was done on, well, it's Tuesday their time, but it's really Monday here. And in that span, I counted for myself, in 53 hours, I only slept 5 hours, and all of it was either on the airplane or in the airport. I don't know how Mike survived because he got there Saturday night, and then we had meetings on Sunday, that 6 meetings with different companies, and I think we split up for a while. I drove about 3.5 hours. He probably drove 4 hours, and it started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't get into the hotel till 9. So, and that was even separate from these folks. So we had a really short but very busy schedule. These are companies that we've been talking to for a number of years. It's a matter of following up with them. As I said, the UAE has become a hub for aviation, so believe it or not, there's actually flight planning and management companies who manage jets that are based in Europe and Asia, but it's all being done out of the UAE. And unless you actually talk to them and build a physical relationship, it's challenging to get them. As I've stated before, we're trying to drive traffic to our airport. There's over 5,000 international flights of corporate jets coming into the LA basin. We're slowly starting to capture some of that, but because the world's big and there's so many different companies, it takes serious one-on-one communication with some of them on multiple times to achieve it. So anyway, very excited. Mike surprised me with this about a month and a half ago on the fact that it was going to come up, and we're glad we were able to pull it off. So all in all, it's very good for us.
And this news literally is worldwide now. With our relationship with the embassy, they've put this release out to all the embassies throughout the world, so they will know that you have a nice airport here in San Bernardino now.
Very good. Well, thank you for that report.
If I could add just one more, I'd like Mark to make a few comments on the full-scale drill that occurred yesterday.
Thank you, Mike. So while Mike and Ovi were being ambassadors to the airport on the other side of the world here at home, we were holding a full-scale exercise it's a new requirement for us. It's been in place with other commercial airports for quite some time, but last year we upgraded our status with the FAA as a Class 1 commercial airport, and because of that, we now have the pride of doing an exercise like we did yesterday for every 3 years. It was a very big exercise, involved a lot of responding agencies from the community through the mutual aid process. So in fact, there were over 20 different emergency agencies involved in the event, approximately 300 participants, included 58 victims, if you will. So they were students from both Victor Valley College as well as Crafton College. Most of them are in the EMT emergency services kind of curriculum, and they were made up with makeup on board the airplanes, went through the whole bit of pulling them off, triaging them, and actually transported them to area hospitals both by ambulance and by helicopter. So it was a very successful event. It was a great test of the airport's emergency plan, and we were very pleased to host it because it was also an event for the county that they had planned. So there was a great cooperation for both agencies for cooperative needs. So if you missed it, it was good to see some of the commissioners there. But if you missed it, we'll be doing it again in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners? We appreciate that report, and Councilman Popescu, if you need a ride home, we can see if we can arrange a chauffeur for you. We'll next move to our consent calendar. We have a motion to move the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any opposed? Seeing none, the consent calendar is approved. Next is item number 14. This is a receive and file the annual independent financial audit report of the San Bernardino International Airport Authority for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017. Burrows?
I'll defer to Mr. Garay.
Thank you. San Bernardino International Airport Authority's annual audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017 is provided here, along with the single audit report for the federal award program and the SAS 114 management letter to the board of to the commissioners. We're requesting that the commissioners receive and file the annual independent audit report for this fiscal year, and authorize the Director of Finance to submit the report to the appropriate government agencies. The annual report ending for this fiscal year 2017 was performed by the audit firm of Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott, LLP. And we have a partner from that firm, Brad Williber, available to present the report and to answer any questions. So, Brad?
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, members of the commission. Can you hear me okay? Yep. It's close, good? Okay, I'll speak into this.
That's better.
We just have a few slides here to go over the results of the audit. The first one is the audit objective, and in our opinion letter, we include the objective of the audit, which is to express an opinion on management's financial statements after we gather evidence, evaluating sufficient appropriate audit evidence to provide a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements, and to provide an opinion as to whether the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Next slide, please. The audit standards that we follow are generally accepted auditing standards and generally accepted government auditing standards, and that's important so that you know that these are standards that are followed by any auditors that are performing this type of service for any government agency across the whole country. Next slide. Responsibilities in that letter are for management over the financial statements, the complete and accurate records. Then it discusses the responsibilities of the governing body and ultimately the auditor, and for the auditor, leading up to the opinion that we're providing. Next slide, please. There are two main types of opinions that auditors can provide on financial statements. One is the unmodified opinion, and one is the modified opinion. And within the modified, there's three different subcategories of that. The airport is receiving an unmodified opinion, which is good. That's the highest level of assurance we can provide on the audit. It means there's no modifications necessary, and the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, on the single audit report, on the next slide, please, we also have an unmodified opinion over the single audit report, which is an audit over the federal awards of the airport. And those reports in their entirety are included in your agenda package. As Bill also mentioned, the SAS, which is Statement of Auditing Standards 114 letter, is included in there, which is our summary of the findings. But I'm here to let you know also that we don't have any additional findings that we need to report to you, and there's no uncorrected misstatements. The financial statements are fairly presented, and I want to thank Mike and Bill and their team here for their accommodating us and our team as we performed this audit this year. It was the first year for us doing this audit since a break. We had been involved years ago, but it was like starting with a whole new team again this year with all new auditors and just gaining an understanding of the entity from scratch, basically. And they were very accommodating in providing all the evidence and documents we needed in order to arrive at our unmodified opinion. And I thank them for their professionalism in that process.
Thank you for that report. Any questions from commissioners? All right, this is a receive and file, I believe. No action necessary to be taken.
Correct, receive and file, and again, I want to commend the firm. As you recall, we did go out for selection this year, and so they got a later start than they normally would have, but they really dug into it and brought us a very, very qualified group of professionals. So Brad, thank you and the team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Next agenda item is item number 15. It's consider and adopt the proposed budget adjustments for fiscal year 2017-18. Mike Burrows.
I'll go ahead and handle this
All
one,
right.
Mayor. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Gray.
Staff proposes certain budget adjustments to increase certain expenditures for the fiscal year 2017-18, the current year that we're in. The details of the adjustments are in the proposed budget adjustments table on page 174. The budget adjustments result in a net increase in expenditures of $609,500. We go to page 175. I'm sorry, the proposed budget adjustments table on page 175. We see the proposed adjustments broken down into revenues and expenditures. We're asking, or requesting increases in the revenue accounts to adjust for increased activity, especially in fuel sales. You'll see the budget adjustment, or the original budget column first, our proposed budget adjustments in the second column, and then the final proposed adjustment budget in the third column. Continuing on to the next category are the proposed expenditures to each one of these line items. I point out to line F, the ARF vehicle. We are requesting a reduction of that to from 600 down to 50,000, and then also a increase on line J for Jet A fuel to respond to the increase in sales that we have to date. The third area down below the dollar amount table are the explanations line by line for each one of those adjustments. They take care of both the revenue side and the expenditure side. As you can see under the proposed adjustments column, the bottom line net adjustment increase is the $609,500, which nets out the revenues against the expenditures and results in a net increase in the expenditures of that amount. That concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Before this comes to the full commission, do we have a finance committee that reviews it and goes over it with you prior to this?
No, not for this one, no.
Okay. No, these budget adjustments.
No.
Any other questions? All right, so I believe this is to just adopt these adjustments. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I have a second, but just a quick follow-up question. So when we did the original budget, we only anticipated $2.3 million to this point in fuel sales. Is that why we're changing, adding it to it, so it turns out to be $3.8 million?
Yes.
That's a huge difference.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Well,
So
it's a good problem to have.
It's been a good year, and we are being conservative on the revenue side at present, because we have to have inventory on hand, but then there's a timing difference on when we sell it and actually get compensated for it. So we'll have probably an update report going into fourth quarter here to see how we're doing on the sales side of this thing. But we have to continue to buy fuel. That's the real nexus of that adjustment.
And this net increase then just goes into the general fund, or where does it
Yeah,
go?
so you have basically four funds at play here. That is in the FBO fund, where the fuel expense and revenues are booked.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? No. Is part of the driver for that the additional contract that you've entered into with UPS?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Two
But in
flights a day.
general, well, that almost that'll be in April. But that we're forecasting for that, so that when they add a second aircraft, we've adjusted for that inventory volume.
Very good.
And I just on that note, it should be noted because we get a weekly report of fuel sales, and last week was surprisingly good, and that's because of some additional chartered cargo that came in. Just here's your perspective of how much revenue we could generate if we can get more and more cargo. So that's
Yes.
a very positive sign.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any opposed? Seeing none. Item number 15 is so ordered. Thank you. Next is item number 16. This is to award a professional services agreement with Overland Pacific and Cutler LLC, providing right-of-way acquisition services in an amount not to exceed $107,130. Mr. Harris?
Thank you. We have a project that is going to upgrade the roadway on Mountain View Avenue between the two bridges, one at the Santa Ana River and one at Mission Creek. We are in the process of obtaining right-of-way to allow us to have temporary access to people's property to aid in the construction, and there are several pieces of land that we need to negotiate with the owner to take away for ADA access, primarily at intersections. There are little slivers of land that we need to keep the facilities in code compliance. What this company is going to do is they're going to provide services for obtaining those right-of-ways. The work includes title searches, negotiating with the individual owners, continuing with the, appraisal services to make sure that we're fair with the owners, and acquisition services to obtain those right-of-ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a
I'll
motion
second.
And a second. Any opposed? Seeing none, item 16 is so ordered. Thank you. Item number 17 is to award a construction contract to Jurgensen Construction for the IRP Site 2 landfill lot repairs project in an amount not to exceed $194,401.50 and appropriate a construction contingency of $19,440. Mr. Harris?
Thank you. To the north side of the airport, there is an existing landfill that was created back when the Air Force gave up the property, and they were taking down old structures. This landfill has a cap on it that we are currently using as storage for cargo trucks. Part of the issue with the cap of the landfill is the landing gear on some of the trucks causes indentations in the top of the layer of the asphalt. What this project is going to do is correct that by repairing the damaged asphalt, and we are going to put down steel plates in appropriate locations to prevent any future damage to the top of the landfill cap.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from commissioners?
Yes.
Councilman Woods?
Thank you. How long is the deteriorated condition of the existing cap been there? How's it been broken up?
It's been a continually increasing damage to it. It's to the point now that we need to address the problems. But with the Air Force, we have to have continuous inspections, and they are fully aware of what has happened. They've reviewed the plans that we're doing to repair them. But the amount of time that those trucks have been on there is about 3 years, if I remember right.
This current batch, the actual landfill itself, the cap, we constructed in 2007. So it's not atypical for asphalt in general to deteriorate over a 7-year life cycle, and we've had repeated use of it. Now, granted, there was probably about 2 or 3 years of ramp up before the market took hold and started actively using it, but it is forecast, and in the land use covenant we have on the property, it contemplates this very thing. That's why we're having to do it at this time. So you got about 10 years of life on it. It's time to do some work.
All right, how are we monitoring that now?
It's a visual inspection twice a year.
And just a visual? We don't have, what do they call those devices they put on the ground to measure the gases coming up? See if
No,
the
it's
water
not,
is in
yeah,
this?
it's not for gas. So the Air Force installed all of the landfill apparatus, methane extraction wells. They monitor that. All we're monitoring is the surface itself, which is the parking lot we put on it. And we have topographical survey. The visual inspections look at indentations. Those can be measured, but that's part of what goes into the biannual reports that we're required to do the resource agency.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes. Mayor
Jim,
Robo?
the bid proposal, you have a couple of them that are really, really high. Is there a reason why they're so much higher than your lowest bid, do you think? Any ideas? Because it's almost double.
There's no one singular reason why bids vary as wide as they do. I've had some projects where the top 6 bidders were within 0.5% of each other, and I've had some where they were 120% apart. So there is no rhyme or reason behind it. There could be some issues with the bidding climate in the area. There could be some issues with where they propose to get the materials used to repair it. So generally, there is no rhyme or reason. It's just how they come in.
And one of the work protocols is they have to work around our existing tenants. Some contractors may add a premium on that. This low one, I don't think did. That's a coordination issue.
Thank you. We have a motion on this?
I'll
Thank
second.
you. We have a second?
Second.
Second. Any opposed? Seeing none, item 17 is approved. Next is item number 18. This is to review the status of the action plan for the San Bernardino International Airport through June 30th, 2018. Mr. Burrows?
Okay, this thing says February. We just finished February, even though it's March 1st. So I think you received an annual audit. And I meant to comment earlier, you are now caught up on your audits. Finally.
Good job.
So we now have a plan to stay on track and on time with that. And Bill's, giving a sigh of relief over there. And little did we know, we had some international trade initiatives this month, more than we even had forecast on that. But part of your budget adjustment, of which we appreciate your support on that, includes some ongoing funding, small amount in the FBO to fund these new initiatives that we have. And that they do need to be supported, as I said, going into the end of the fiscal year. So in March, hey, guess what? We completed the annual audit. So next month we'll be talking about some operational updates with you. We have had some staff attrition and changes in our operations division. Most notably, our airport manager, Liliana Valle, accepted a new position with the County of Riverside. And it's a very good opportunity for her, so we're very happy for Liliana. But Ms. Pritchett has been very, very busy trying to backfill those positions. In addition, we lost 3 airport operations staff. They accepted positions at Ontario Airport, and so we've been in the process of backfilling those as well, and gives us an opportunity to look at the organizational structure there too. But happy to say by your next meeting we'll have a new airport manager on board and some new recruits in there to backfill those positions. Demand is pretty good out there with a few adjustments we made, and so I'll have a full report on how we did on that at your next meeting. So
Thank you for that update.
that concludes my report.
Any public speaking slips? Thank you. Was that a no? Thank you. Any commission comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned till Wednesday, March 28th. Thank you very much. Drive safe.